Hello and welcome back to Artisan First, a global live stream of artisan and crafts from India and Sri Lanka. And for our next session, we have Gaurav Gupta of Akaaro. Akaaro is a brand that focuses on textiles as a starting point of design, handcrafting it from yarn using traditional artisanal processes. And in conversation with Gaurav today is Karishma Shahani Khan of Ka-Sha. Ka-Sha is a brand that focuses on clothing as a medium for storytelling to celebrate multi-layered cultures and ever-changing social conversations. Thank you so much to both of you for joining us today. Karishma, I know you have been familiar with Gaurav's journey with the creation of Akaaro. And through this conversation, I hope we learn more about the brand and, of course, sustainable studio practices in general.
Sure. Hi, Natasha. Thank you so much. Hi, Gaurav.
Hi.
Okay, so thank you for the introduction. So I don't know for who doesn't know, but Gaurav is a dear friend also, and I've always really looked up to the work that he does. I remember seeing one of his shows years ago, and I was just like, "This is amazing! Who's doing this kind of work?" So I'm really happy that you asked me to do this. So thank you very much. So Gaurav, do you want to tell us about Akaaro?
Yeah. Hi everyone. Thanks for logging in, and I'm glad to be a part of this session. So I train by training. I'm a textile designer, specifically woven textiles. And before that, I trained in fashion and graphics in Delhi at NIFT. So Akaaro happened by chance. I started the virtual studio in 2008 because that was the only thing I knew, and I just wanted to do basically more of, let's say, textiles only. And back in 2008, I finished my studies education in 2005, and from 2005 to 2008 I was kind of exploring. And I think in India there was not much in terms of platforms, and especially textiles were not that elaborate. So it's been an organic journey, and it's now a full-fledged design studio which primarily works around woven textiles and women's wear and menswear. We do a lot of other work on the side. So under the studio we have three verticals. We are heavily research-based. Then as I said, we create textiles. We are probably the only mainstream fashion studio in India which only does woven textiles. For last 13 years, we've only done handlooms. We don't do prints, we don't do embroideries, we don't do anything else. So the first leg is that, where we create the textiles in-house, and then we do the clothes. In the second vertical, I do a lot of consulting where I work with people outside Akaaro, and I help them kind of understand how to sort of contextualize textiles for their own requirements or their businesses. And the third is academics, which as of for last 2-3 years I've been kind of put on hold, but I'm kind of getting back to it again, which is kind of a mix of research, technology, innovation, and then disseminate into academics.
Right. Okay. So when you say that you work a lot with textiles, how is it different? Like, is the way you actually approach your entire process, like, did you have to make any shifts in your brand or the way people need to understand it, because you work more with textiles in the fashion industry? Because we know how fashion can be. Like, it is quite surface ornamented. You're always talking about like bridal or Indian. There's so many different ways to look at it. But do you think that for you as a brand, as a textile designer or a textile focused brand, you had to make some major shifts in the way you practiced it?
I won't say they were deliberate shifts in the sense that my first outing, so I did my debut at a show called London Craft Fair, which is called Origin. Right. Sort of an iconic, used to be, it doesn't exist anymore. It was one of the most iconic platforms in Europe, and I would say globally, for crafts. I started that, I think, in 2008, and I did that for 4 years. And subsequently and I was only doing scarves and fabrics and a bit of home, we were doing throws and cushions and all that. And then subsequently, I got into clothing, which I did a debut in India in 2010 at the Fashion Week. at India Fashion Week in Delhi. So I would say in the last 10 years of my journey, which I would say more mainstream because fashion is what gets more eyeballs. The first 4 years were very sort of abstract, where I don't think people really understood what I was doing. And also, Akaaro as a brand, I think largely we have not really dependent heavily on PR and marketing. Like we've using PR or endorsements as our, I would say, vehicle to put it out there. So I think the first 4 years largely were a little bit more silent and abstract, where I think people who were genuinely interested and who kind of saw, okay, there is something interesting here, they reached out. And I think commercially we were not able to take off till then. We had sort of, I can say, like a cult following where people who were really, really interested and who really liked what I was doing, they used to get in touch. And it was hard. It was very tough. It's not been an easy ride at all. But post, I think 2014, there definitely been changes. Like I never used to use color earlier. Like color was almost negligible in my work, considering that we were also looking at India as a market. So there were, but they were not deliberate. I think also I think over a period when you work in the industry, you understand, okay, when you take, because I think the ability of a designer, a good designer is somebody whose decision making is very, decision making plays a big role in terms of are you successful or not. So I think over a period, I've understood, okay, these are the things which will work. So in our research also, when we do we have to take certain decisions, we do it accordingly. So I think it's toned down a little, but we have still continued what we were doing. But I think from a marketing point of view, again, in terms of what product should cater to what region, I think we are a lot more planned and organized and all that now.
So how do you plan your back end if everything's so heavily reliant on weaving? You have someone who sits with you in your studio and actually weaves and develops things. So how does that work? How do you approach that as a studio practice?
So that's the main sort of stay of what we do at Akaaro. That's where it's from the other brands in the country, and I would say mostly internationally also, because I think we were again one of the first labels to bring in textiles into the studio, especially woven textiles. So crafts largely. So you look at jewelry, you look at ceramics, you look at millinery or anything. Most of them are in the studio format now. So there are people who practice them in the studio, and I think weaving still in India, the narrative is such that it's mostly based. There are weaving clusters, and that's where only it happens. So it's still not moved centers, and I think that also kind of largely dictates the narrative in terms of how we look at woven textiles or crafts in India largely. Where it's a lot about revival, it's a lot about helping the craftsmen, it's a lot about looking at the artisans and all that. But when we started, so I got the loom to the studio, and in fact, where I am right now, where I sit, so the loom is next to me. I can actually show you.
Can we see it? Yeah, can we see that?
Yeah, I'll just pan the thing. So wait, sorry, I'll have to reverse the.
That's right.
So that's the loom.
Cool.
So this is what I started with. This I bought in 2007. And
was it the first thing you bought for your studio?
That's the first thing. Akaaro started with this. So this is the loom which we work with. And we've been working with, this is the loom I've had for last, almost 13 years now. So we literally weave on a daily basis. And this is, let's say, where I am. So
do you view the loom that you have in your studio, is it more for development, or do you also do production runs on that?
So it's very interesting. So the most complicated work happens on this loom, because another thing, you really want to work with the crafts in the villages, you have to spend a lot of time. And also, I think they are so set in their basic working practices or techniques that they are not very forthcoming or interested in doing things which are either very complicated or they think commercially is not viable, because at the end of the day, craftsman is working on an average, like I'm talking about a layman in terms of a generic way. So within the crafts also you can divide based on their skill level, but largely most of the crafts are interested in doing work which get them a regular revenue. So they don't do things which are very complicated. They want to do things which are very easy, and a lot of it gets exported as well. So what we do is, I think from a technique point of view, has never been easy. It doesn't excite me at all. I don't like doing things which are very basic or which are very simple. So to an audience or a consumer, it might not look that there is so much gone into it, but most of our work takes 2 years, sometimes 2.5 years. In fact, the current collection has 3 years, which we've just. So what happens is, with this loom and with the weaver who I have, the master weaver here, Gopal, it's very easy now because I think we both understand each other. We've been working together for good 12, 13 years. So it's almost like we don't only talk. He just knows. Like when I tell him this, he knows, okay, this is what we have to do. So shows the main collection which we do, the first samples which we develop happens on this. And I've also worked with the same, so what we call clusters, or what I call my regions where I work. So I work a lot in Fulya, then I work in Chanderi. So I've only worked with the same people for, again, last 10, 12 years. I've never changed my craftsmen also. And we have where we've never returned the work. We don't reject. We try and accommodate as much as we can. So we have a very strong back end in that sense. And they understand. And they also know that commercially there is a lot of struggle. They all know that when they work with me, because every 4 months or 5 months they complain. Or, there is a brand which is started after you, or, my friend, like, so in the weavers, like, they also have friends. So my weaver is working for an X brand, but, he's made a house. He's made this, he's made that. We are still doing the same thing. So explain them, okay, why are we doing what we are doing? And these things take time and all that. So they understand. And I would say it's a strong backend, but strong also when I say in terms of ethically, in terms of I think emotionally, in terms of, I think the commitment to the craft, the commitment to the skill, the commitment to me, their trust in me. So I think it's like we all go hand in hand. And I think it's very different. The way we work, it's very, very different. And it's a very small setup as well. Like we don't produce 1,000 meters or 5,000 meters. We do very less work, but I think we do we do beyond, we do what I call craft couture. So I like that.
So you obviously know how to weave yourself, and you're, even from your family background, there is a history of weaving in it. So how are the conversations like when you have them, or when you met your Gopalji for the first time? Very often than not, they think that we don't know. Designers are just coming and saying it. We get told that all the time. So how does a conversation play out between the both of you? So where is the distinction between designer and artisan? Like, because I feel like at some point that overlaps a lot, right? Through conversations, you worked with them for so many years. So like, how would a conversation, like, how are the interactions between you guys from the beginning to now?
So it's a very important and interesting question, because I think there is a lot of noise, where they say, oh, there should be transparency, you need to help, you need to. I have to say one thing. I think designers are nobody to help the craftsmen. Craftsmen are helping. In most of the cases, I won't call it 100%, but in 99% of the cases. So I think designers need to shut up. That's first.
True, I agree.
Second, I think going back to my particular case, so this is an interesting story which started in 2007. I think I just returned, as I said, from completing my course at London, at Chelsea. And I think those days were very different. Like this, a lot of effort, what's going on in the city. So there used to be an event at Pragati Maidan in Tantu, which was like a government-run craft fair, kind of a trade fair kind of a thing. And I met these two boys who had a stall. There were two young boys, and I said, okay, this looks very interesting what they've done. And I had a friend who had no money. I bought from them for around 7,000, and then we kind of started talking. And then I traveled. I didn't know where. So I am not somebody. So my entire practice is also not based around that this is in cluster. This is this. I don't believe in the terms cluster. I don't believe in regional. In the idea that there is nothing called Banarsi, there is nothing called Chanderi. These are names of towns. Weaving same everywhere globally. So I had no idea. So call it traditional Indian textiles. There's a subject also called TIT. So I never was interested in such, and I didn't know where Fulia is or where Chanderi is or where what is. But anyhow, I traveled, I went there, and then I tried initially, and I tough, they were remote areas. It's not humanly possible for me to live there for a work with them in those conditions and to convince them. And also, if they don't know what you're doing, because I don't work, oh, I have this sample, you have to replicate it. No.
Yeah.
I have my own research, I have my own process, and then I work. A lot of times, I also don't know what's going to come in the end. I think that's what design is largely about for me. So initially, when I went and I worked, there were a lot of issues. They were not ready to budge. There was this main guy who was like the main sort of central point, who himself was working with a lot of Japanese and German designers. He was working with Issey Miyake, he was working with Jürgen Löw, working with a lot of French brands, German brands, and all these guys. So he still could understood, okay, that what I was talking had some relevance, and he kind of he could gauge, okay, I can do this. So we started work, we developed some stuff, and then I told him, I said, look, boss, I like this, and if I work like this, we will never be able to push the body of work. We will keep on doing the same work. And
Someone said we can't hear you very well. Someone saying that. Sorry.
Is it clear now?
Is it better? I'm hoping it is. Yeah.
I guess this is clear. So I told him, and then I said, okay, I think we really need to get the looms to Delhi. I would like, and I trained it, so I wanted to do it myself, but they were not ready to agree. But eventually, then somehow it was a long conversation. I still remember it took me almost 2 months. They thought that I'll get one loom, then I'll copy it. I will set up more looms, and then we'll never go back. And they also don't have trust. They were just not ready. And I think I'm talking 2007. So it's really, really way back. Then textiles were not. Textiles were.
Lost your video.
Textiles were not this engaging at that time. But nevertheless, I got Gopal, and we set up the loom, and he also didn't know what to expect. So I think for the first 2 years or year and a half, nobody knew what I was doing. Everyone thought I'm mad. Also because my extended family is all into textiles, they just thought I'm really losing it, because I didn't have any money. So some of the equipment I bought, I went to Panipat, I went to a kabadi wala, so like a scrap shop, and I bought the winding machine on which you put up the warp. I got 1,500 rupees. It was totally broken, and then I had to fix it when we got it to Delhi. So there were baby steps we took, and it's worked. I think I think it was a lot of belief, and I myself also, I would say, really didn't realize that this is what it will become eventually. And it's not been easy, because every time the loom would break, the materials have to come from Calcutta or they have to come from somewhere else. So it was a slow process, and we don't work like a factory where I don't expect him to work throughout the day, or it doesn't happen. Like, he has his own pace he works on, and I understand that this is the pace. So he goes out for smoke every 30 minutes.
That's a bad habit.
He's got to city life now. But I think the only thing which we both understand is he knows when there is an emergency, when I really need things, and then we increase the pace. And also, this business is all about planning. You have to have that planning in place. So we do that properly, and over a period, we've set up that mechanism.
Right. So this brings me to a very important point that we keep arguing and debating about, is that how do you highlight the artisan without objectifying them, right? So how do you highlight the fact, like, if you look around us, we all know what has happened to the word sustainability. So what are your thoughts about sustainability, the word that I don't like very much because I think it's misused? And also, what is your like, how do you think that we can actually highlight the artisan without objectifying them? And I think there's some more questions which I'm going to look at.
This is a very tricky and a gray space as far as I'm concerned personally. If you ask me, it's very controversial, and I have never really had that need to realize that we don't talk about the artisan, honestly, in my personal way. Because I think what we're doing is very, very different. I don't think we have to take responsibility uh, uh, I don't know how to put it. I don't have the right words. Let me put it like this. So I don't bargain with my weavers in terms of the prices we work on. There is a mutual understanding, and end of the day, for me, it's business. Because I think it's very, very important. You need to know why are you doing it, how are you doing it, and what is the exchange here happening. I would say, and my case is honestly very different. Talk on behalf of others. I can only talk about myself. I would say you can't discount the fact that a designer also adds a certain amount of in our case, I think it's a 50-50% partnership, or sometimes it's more than 50% in my case, because I'm not working with the traditional ideas. It's pretty much so it's not only the weaver also. Like if you look at the chain, there are a lot more people involved. You have the dyers, you have the cards, so you have the people who punch the chain, you have the people who spin the yarn. So you can't talk about everyone. I think this whole issue of, which is largely prevailing in current times on social media and all that, about equality, about transparency. I think these things are about, I have a relationship. It's almost like I have a very sacred relationship with my craftsmen. And I don't need to prove to anybody and talk about it, as far as we both know what is between us. I'm not here to please people to their fancies and so-called organizations and, the groups where they talk about artisans, because I have given my life to it. I've been doing this for such a long time. This is the only thing I've done, for last 15 years. And nobody has the right to tell me that this is what I have to do, and I'm exploiting somebody, or there is no transparency. There is more than what you call transparency. People who are talking about transparency, I would like to ask them, what is the commitment you have? Do you stick to the same people? Do you work? What have you are doing? You're bringing the fabrics, you're putting prints on it, and you're selling. What have you done for a textile? In the sense, have you pushed the idea of design? Have you really worked on the structures? Do you understand the local change of sort of a power play between the craftsmen in their villages? Do you understand their caste systems? This whole thing of playing to the gallery, you make things here and then you go abroad and then you talk about, oh, we are helping. You're nobody to help. I'll again say, set up. My weavers have more money than I do, actually. They're funding me. The reverse process. So I don't think there is anything about this. I think people, and it's for all industries, people, there are within the crafts, there are people who are master craftsmen. They're very, very popular. It's an individual journey. I'm nobody to highlight anybody. It's an individual journey. They know if they want it from what it is, they would do it. They are no less than us. It's an equal partnership. When we say that we have to highlight, I think that's the worst thing you can do, because you're talking about a lot of things where you don't have confidence in them. You think they're less than you. No, there's nothing like this. I know a lot more weavers. I know a lot more craftsmen who don't want to work, who say you don't have enough business for us. You're too small for us. It's like any other industry. And this is my personal and individual thoughts and processes, because I do know there are organizations which are working with larger groups. In those cases, yes, it's about exposure. You do need to train them. Like I work with people, we've done workshops where we went to a place in it's called Mubarakpur. It's 3 hours from Banaras. We worked with weavers. We gave them designs. Whatever they did, they were paid to agree to work with us, and then we sold their work. But nowhere, and I do agree, there are some of them who need help in the sense, in terms of education, in terms of other things, in terms of understanding how the business works. But it's not about highlighting who they are. I think you have to make them self-dependent so they can continue the journey. And I think a very good example is definitely Handloom School. It's one of the only organizations I think is genuine. And I've always told this to Sally, and I believe in it, because I also think we have a process which we don't understand, where, you have the ratio of the people who are weaving, or let's say the people who are themselves calling designers, is very skewed. Right. The number of designers are going up. If you look at the number of design schools moving in the country, it's a different. I will not call all the schools proper schools, but if I just look at technically the number of people who are coming out, and these days, we have created so much baggage we carry with textiles and with handlooms. They all want to do this. So the weavers are down, the designers are going up. I mean, what are you talking about? You need to make the craft aspirational. You need to make it more interesting. You need to make sure that if I have a niece or if I have friends whose kids, the kids need to be interested in what we do. And one of the reasons what we do with the studio textiles is that we do open houses in the studio where we call the kids, anybody is more than welcome. They see how it's done. Because if you don't see how painful it is, how laborious it is, you will always wonder why I'm paying so much price. So I think we need to change this whole narrative. It's just too much of nonsense. It is utter nonsense.
So do you think that right now with PR and marketing, and you think a lot of brands are changing the way people look at them by just using this as a story and then talking about sustainability as a big new buzzword? Like, do you think that that's also affecting how a consumer is viewing brands who... So the point is that a lot of brands do this as a part of their DNA, right? It's a part of your value. You're sustainable or you're conscious because that's who you are. You're not highlighting their work to other people, but you're still, supporting their family, supporting them, working with each other constantly. So there are many different ways of looking at this word that is sustainable now. So do you think that PR and marketing and brands and branding has a lot to that has changed the way people look at sustainability or how they practice it?
So I think personally, for me, again, I mean, it's not a term which I align with a lot.
Yeah.
We're working on a website. We need to put a section where we talk about this, but we don't have a term right now. We're struggling.
We understand.
I don't want to use this term, but I think it's a part and parcel of who we are, at least in India. I don't think this is something we need to learn, and I think people don't understand it. And I would say, yes, you're right. It's the media, it's the PR agencies, it's the designers themselves. Also, it's the consumers. I would put the onus on everyone equally. I think it's a lot of it is a disservice because you're not educating. You're actually going in a different direction. Nobody's crossing. It's almost like fake news.
It's also stereotyping. No, you're saying if you have to be sustainable, then these are the things you need to be. So people are so narrow-minded. They think that if you're using a certain kind of dye or a certain kind of fabric, that's all that it takes to make you sustainable.
Yeah, I'll give you a small example. A lot of brands write, we are doing handlooms, that's why we're sustainable. No, you're not.
Exactly.
Because it can also be done with polyester. Handlooms can also be done with chemicals. Handlooms can be done with a lot of other things. There are a lot of brands talking, oh, we have changed our packaging. They put the pictures. There is this amazing brand I know. They go to the factories, they take the pictures. They obviously invest a lot in their, they have this whole team, they have money at disposal. So there is a lot of this cosmetic exercise which is done. And then there is whole thing packaged and then it's put out. Now, a layman don't really know, what it is. And I mean, I am literally nobody to talk about this. And, I don't want to say this is right or this is wrong. But largely in my body of work in last, 10, 12, 15 years I've worked, we've never used the terms khadi, we've never used the terms revival, or we've never used the term welfare or sustainability. Sustainability, we end up using once or twice because I've been part of some projects or some larger programs, internationally where, that was the only way. I mean, you couldn't do away with it. But I would say, it's for me to know what I do. And I think, we have this narrative in Akaaro, which is called look within, seek within. So for me, it's about seeking, going within. And I think sustainability, again, that's the term we are using because that's the available term and what people understand. It's the more you know about it, the less you know about it. It's one of those things. It's a very spiritual thing, actually, more than anything else. It's not about dyes. It's not about materials. It's not about certain kind of practices. It's not about ethics. It's a lot about, for me, discipline. It's a lot about commitment. It's a lot about your value system. It's a lot about humanity. It's a lot about believing in yourself. And I think it's all those things. And I would say what's happening right now in India and globally is very dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, before I hand it back to Natasha, I have two really quick questions. Someone actually asked, can you tell us about your family background and how you chose to get into this? I thought it's interesting. We should ask you that. And my second question is why Akaaro? Like, why the name Akaaro? Just these two things, and then
So, okay, I'll start with the family background first.
yes.
I was born in a small city just close to Delhi called Rohtak, and my family is sort of into business. They are into food. Food in the sense, not like food, but government midday meals and all that. My father used to do that. It's a regular upper middle class family of any small town. I had no idea I'm gonna get into design, and it's the last thing I would understand, and nobody understands this in my family. But my extended family, which includes my uncles, are in textiles. They're a lot of Panipats, and they are into home furnishings. And one of my uncles happened to be like a pretty big time exporter. So I've been aware of the terms, but honestly, had nothing to do with what they were doing. And it's funny because I lived with the same uncle for 2 years, but I used to just hate it. And I personally very much invested in music, which I still want to do. And it was just a chain of, I think, accidents I can call, which kind of led me to NIFT. And it has nothing to do with in fact, my family, I've been very, very independent. I left home when I was 15 years old. So they never came to my college. They never came to NIFT throughout my course. They never knew what I was doing. They had no idea. Like till date, whatever has happened has been pretty much independent. So I'm not a product of that where they were constantly behind me. I mean, they've always been behind me. There is a lot of I'm really, really fortunate about that. But as far as my work is concerned, they still, I mean, a lot of them now, they obviously come, they come to the studio sometimes because they want clothes. But I think largely it's been a very, very tough journey. A very, very tough journey. I've slogged. I can say that.
Yeah.
And I'm still slogging, but I enjoy it. So when we talk about Akaaro, why the term Akaaro? Akaaro happened as a term I came across in London. I used to be very interested in astrology at that time. And so I'm always interested in future, actually. I'm not very interested in the past. And I'm very interested in languages and Sanskrit and all that. So it's actually a Sanskrit term. And I think, I'm somebody who always believes in this fact that I take a huge pride in where I come from. I'm really, really sort of, I think, proud of this country and everything else. And I've always had this problem where, we underplay ourselves and we are always being seen as, especially like I'm talking about 2005, I mean, that particular time, we were not very well respected when it comes to design and all that. And it used to really hit me. Like, I used to hate it. So I wanted it, and I didn't want to kind of take the whole, I don't know the term again, but I didn't want like a very typical term where you say something and they say, oh, it's from India. Indian people, poor people, craft. I didn't want that.
Peacocks, elephants.
I wanted a term where it could be from anywhere. I mean, to me, it sounded very Japanese, and it's easy to pronounce. So it's Sanskrit. It's actually got something to do with the. So it means. So when you say Hey Vishnu, Hey as a prefix could be Akaaro. So you would say Akaaro Vishnu. So it's supposed to be a very auspicious terminology in terms of a word. And if I kind of break it down, what A is to English, Akaaro is to Sanskrit. So I wanted a term where, I'm not kind of playing on the strength of where I'm from. And I didn't want that kind of, I can say, let's say, I won't call it sympathy. I still don't know the right word, but I hope you guys understand what I'm trying to say. But I think largely it is to do with, even now, like when I take the work anywhere, you can't really say, unless and until I tell you, you won't really get to know. I want to play at equal, I want to equalize the thing. I don't want to kind of make them think, okay, he comes from here and, he needs help and all that. No, I'm saying we are at par with what you guys do. Maybe we are, if not better. I mean, I would love to say we are better. And I think we have a huge history of what we do. And our story is craft. And I think let's just go there and kick some ass. That's what I wanted to do. So I've stayed from this entire narrative of what's going on in India with, textiles, handlooms, and khadi and all those things. Though I'm very much a part of it, but I think all of this is an underlying fact of what I do. It's almost like in India, we have this habit, So when my father used to donate when I was a kid, we had this small kind of a case. We call it hundi in Hindi. It's like a clay box, and you put your money into it. And it would always say Gupta Dan, which means nobody knows who's donated it. So that's what I want to say. I don't want to shout out loud about a lot of stuff. I think it's for people to understand. We have done, my job as a designer is to design and is to make. I'm doing that. I don't want to take these small cues and shout out loud, oh, look, we have done it for the first time. Oh, look, this star is wearing it. Oh, look, we have revived this. Oh, look, we are the gods. No, you're nobody. My job is to do my job. And whatever happens, happens. What you say is, karam karo, fal ki chinta mat karo. I think that is the underlying fact. What we do is what we are doing. I've been in the city for 12 years. The loom has been there for 12 years. I don't know, 90% of the industry have never visited. People who say, oh, we are very committed. No, you're not. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. But thank you so much. I love having these conversations with you. You know that. I like picking your brains. But Natasha, if you have anything you want to add, and I'm going to hand it back to you.
Natasha wanted me to show some work. So if you still have...
Yes, I did want you to show some work. And then I did actually also, after we look at some of the textiles that you actually created in your studio, I also wanted to ask both of you. I know we've already heard some of this from Gaurav in the conversation, but I also wanted to ask Karishma, is that both of you work with artisans, and there are two schools of thought. One that promotes intervention, and the other that says that you should allow artisans to develop their own creativity because intervention endangers craft traditions. Karishma, I actually would like you to tell us about this, because I know that you work with a variety of very different artisans with your brand. So what do you think about intervention versus allowing artisans to develop their own creativity?
So I believe that people know what they're doing. So if I have to step in and keep telling them how, like, for example, like if you're talking to someone, even if it's a journalist, and they say to you, should I send you the article to cross-check it after I'm done? I usually say no to them, because I believe that you know your job. I'm not supposed to do your job for you. You do yours, I'll do mine. Having said that, the way I apply it to the work I do is that I really believe that the entire, my purpose in many ways of working is people. I really love working with people. I believe that intervention as well as knowledge of a certain thing go hand in hand. I am not sure how much we are inventing. I don't know. But I know that what we're doing is we're working together, and I do love to. And it's not because I want to talk about who's making it. I just believe that I don't make it alone. I make it with other people. So we are a bunch of people who make it together, which is why we talk about everyone who's there with us, whether it's a person who even just, does the hand stitching or the hemming or the quality control. So my point of view about it is that you need to let the artisan do what they know how to do really well. But the fact is that we need to also add value to it. And if I'm not adding value to it, then I don't need to be there. So I like to believe that it's a balance of both. I don't think that we are fixed on either or, but I feel like there needs to be value addition from both sides, for sure, 100%. So I don't know if that answers your question at all, but I said it anyways. And if it and so for us, we work a lot with people who even are like learning the skill. So for example, we have certain people who have been doing it, who are like an artisan, and then we have people who we also train. For me, a large part of what I do is education and skill development, and that's what I really want to continue doing going forward. So we have people who come to us with zero experience, but they just need a job. So we train a lot of women to actually do certain things. So I have women from Pune who came and worked with me who had no clue about, who were essentially cleaning people's homes, and they came and said, Didi, someone had told them Didi is giving jobs to all the women. And then they came to me and they didn't know how to even sew in a button except for the basic thing that they do at home. And today they actually clam dye for us. Is that a wrong thing? I don't think so. I mean, as long as we're able to give people work to do, I think that teaching someone a craft is also equal to only working with a person who knows the craft already. So we have a huge mix of people. We have weavers who are like in Chanderi, in fact, who've been weaving for years and they do such a fantastic job. Then we have like, we try to do like variations of weaving with upcycling in our own studio based on whatever we learn as we go along. So honestly, my practice is it because it takes on so many different kinds of ways. And in fact, if someone asks me, what do you do? I mean, how do I pinpoint on what do I do? Because what I'm trying to do is just work with the craft that's around, that's there. We can work with our hands and just make things, you know. So for me, I think it's really a mix of things. It's really a mix of things. Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much. And Gaurav, yes, if you could share probably like 5 garments that you really, that I think define Akaaro. I mean, and I'm going to vote for the Kinji, the Kinji garments because those are one of my favorites. But yes, if you could show us a few things.
And I would say intervention is very important, and it's very, very, very important. Anyway, so, okay, let's start with the first. Wait, I'm just trying to see how I.
Switch camera.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so this is a very interesting piece. It's, I call it Jatayu. I'll just show it to you. So this is entirely woven. There is no, so what all this you see, the texture which you see here, this is developed in the loom. So this is the back side. So it's a single running thing. And all this, if you see, is part of the fabric. Now, something like this cannot happen without intervention. And it's been hand. So if you see this inside, there is no stitching here. Like there is no stitching in this at all. It's just a single length, which we've just taken off the loom, and we've only hand pleated it here, which is basically done by sort of pin and needle. So that's first. And it's pure cotton. There is nothing in it. Okay, I'm going to show you a second piece, which is this. So this is one of my favorite projects which I've done in 2012. This is Swarovski beads. See if you see it closely. It's woven within the fabric and it's mohair. So if you see these coming out, so it's a part of the thread. See, can you see this? So this is woven. This is woven within the fabric, and again straight off the loom. It's a very basic silhouette, but I have perhaps one more piece like this. But again, so to weave this again, you needed intervention, and it also has stainless steel in it. This is another one of my favorite pieces, the third. So this is 2011. This has won multiple awards globally for woven textiles in different kind of competitions and awards. It's based on golden ratio, and it's very interesting. I'm just opening it to show you. So if you see this, again, it's a single length, what I call engineering. So you know the materials change. So from here, when we start, it starts with silk and cotton, and then it changes. This is stainless steel, and it comes all the way down. And then there are patterns in it. If you see this, and this is based on golden ratio. So if you measure the fabric from top to bottom, you'll actually get that ratio, which is 1:1.8. That's the back. You can see small patterns here also. Okay, so that's third. So these are the archive pieces which I've shown you. I'm showing you Kinji now. This is by far, I think, the most revolutionary thing we have designed, and which changed the fortunes of my brand. It has a stretch in it. Wait. See. So this is a fabric which is basically made out of cotton and silk. I just gave it a name, Kingji, again done on the studio. This we must have produced already for 5,000 meters. And it just sells like hotcakes. And we have different versions and varieties. Now in this, what you can also do is you can do anything to it and it kind of comes back to the shape. It's most of the people who know Akaaro know this and they possibly have it. Natasha has, I think,
Yes.
2-3 pieces, I don't know. Then something very recent, not recent actually. I'll show you the first piece we did at Akaaro ever. The first piece which came out of my loom is this. So this will also answer a question which Karishma asked me, how does it work between me and the weaver, Gopal? So when the first weave we did, I didn't design the pattern. You know, that's a very important thing to understand. So the Indian textiles largely revolve around what I call ghaspoos, you know, which is phool patti. So the motifs we work are either Mughal, floral, you know, whatever. And I personally don't use them. I've never used them. This is probably one of the only pieces where we have it. So he brought a file of designs with him, which he said, he showed me, and I obviously didn't like it because aesthetically it was not my space. But to make him comfortable, we use the same design. So this is the design. It's jamdani, but what I did is I made it my own. How? I broke it with stripes, so it becomes abstract. So you see it, but you don't see it. So it worked for him, it worked for me, and this is the first piece which I made. Starts from the top with cotton, goes all the way, and then it transforms into steel. So that was the front, and that's the back. So there are a lot of pieces which have like, can I also show you?
Okay. I think we'll see one last thing before we sign off.
Yeah, I'll just show you the loom. I'll actually show you
Yes.
the loom and I'll make you meet Gopal. So this is Gopal. Nada. Hello,
Gopal ji, namaste.
He can't see you, but if you have a question for him, you can ask him. And he can do a small demo. So we are weaving linen right now. You have any questions, you can ask him and you can see him face to face. Wait, I'll just. So now he can see you. Wait, sorry. You can talk to him. One question if you want.
दादाजी आपको आप इतने सालों से स्टूडियो में काम कर रहे हैं, तो आपको लगता है कि स्टूडियो में काम करना और आपके जैसे गांव में अगर आप काम कर रहे होते तो उसमें क्या फर्क है?
इसमें बहुत फर्क है। गांव में एक तरीका ये है और दूसरा तरीका, यहाँ डिजाइन करना पड़ता है, या सारा कुछ मैसे में करना पड़ता है, और एक आदमी सारा कुछ यह करता हूँ, और जो डिजाइन होता है ये सब हैंडलूम का डिजाइन है, बाहर का कोई काम है नहीं है हमारा, सब हैंडलूम का। और गांव में क्या होता है, गांव में तो बाहर से ढका ले आना पड़ता है, कोई करना पड़ता है, फिर दूसरा लगाना पड़ता है, फिर काम करना पड़ता है।
Gaurav, you're just going to have to paraphrase that in English quickly.
So what he said is that the difference between working in the village and here is, here it's totally different. You have to work, it's more design based. In the village, it's not largely that design based. In village, he has to collect all the material first and then they start. Here, obviously, everything comes to him. And also here, he's the only person. So he's involved right from the first stage to the last stage, right? In the village, he's only weaving, right. Or he's sometimes. So there are so obviously the mechanism is different.
Okay. So on that note, we're going to sign off for now. Thank you so much, Gaurav and Karishma, for this really interesting session, because I think it gives us a very different point of view about crafts and artisans and how you can work with them. Just to let you know that Akaaros products are also available on the Gourmet Travel website, which will be shared on screen soon.